Welcome to another podcast, Saving America. This is a weekly podcast coming to you from Houston, Texas. And David Schein is the host. I'm just the person that introduces him. So we're going to get right to the latest and greatest, what's going on in the world of saving America. So politics, basically. And we're going to start with what's in the news. So we'll talk about what's in the news, and then what are the rumors going on about all this in the news. And then let's just get back to just the facts.
You say, hey, and that's your final answer?
So David, to the news. In the news, what's going on with all this, the school systems, especially New York City, starting and stopping and starting and stopping. So what's the latest in the news there?
Well, it's not good for the students, and that's my main concern. The future of America are our children, A to Z across America. And the situation with our public school systems in general is not great. A lot of private school systems have stayed open. And as people have pointed out, so the children of the wealthy, the children of the middle class are going to school. Now, what do those parents know? Or are they all careless? Are they all not loving their children, even though they're paying money for them to go to school and not just using tax dollars? But the public school system magically said, oh my goodness, we're going to make children sick if we take them to school. And so the reality is that very, very little happens to children who go to school with regard to COVID-19. On the other hand, they develop, they learn, they advance, they socialize, and they are so isolated when they are not in school and they're sitting at a computer. It's not what works for little children and middle school children. It just doesn't work. And the great shame is that the people who most need to be supported by the public school system, which is the lower income people, the unemployed, and the middle income people, are the ones who can least afford to have their children at home. Some of them do not have computers. Most of them certainly do not have a computer for each child and to provide the attention that they need. So this is a great crime that America is committing against its families, especially low-income families and its children of those families. So we come to a headline 2 weeks ago. The city of New York, the largest public school system in the country, closes its school system because it said, oh my goodness, the COVID positivity rate has hit 3%. We made a deal with the unions, the pro-communist unions, that we're going to shut down the school system if it gets to 3%. There was actually a debate about it. As I mentioned on a previous broadcast, my favorite cartoon was the headline page of the New York Post that showed Cuomo and de Blasio with dunce caps on. And I think that's an extremely apt observation in one frame of the type of ridiculousness. So the city of New York has announced that they will return to classrooms on December 7th. And I don't understand why it's not November 30th, by the way, rather than a week later, because our children are struggling and they need that education. I think the hypocrisy of this operation on both coasts, California closed all restaurants, indoors and outdoor dining. My favorite story about that from this week just came in yesterday. One of the council people from the city of Los Angeles who voted to close outdoor dining, seen dining without a mask in Santa Monica. Same council person.
Love those stories. My God.
It's a shame. By the way, on my way to the office today, as you know, I'm broadcasting from my Heights office, and I do go up and down Montrose Boulevard. Sad to report, yet another small business is closed. There was a facility called Snap Kitchen around the 3900 block of Montrose. It seemed to get off to a good start. I think it's been there 3 or 4 years. And sadly, I see the place has been cleared out. And there was a for rent sign on the door today as I went by, and that was literally just put up today. We're facing a crisis in America of small businesses that are being forced to close. And remember, it's not just those business owners, many of whom have personally guaranteed the leases. They're still on the hook for the leases, even if the business doesn't operate. Number two, concern about the landlords. Not all properties are owned by giant mega conglomerates. And number three, what about the employees? Each of those small businesses represents individuals who no longer have jobs. They may find them elsewhere, but they do not have them where they have been working. And of course, the disruption that causes. So it is indeed a time in America when we need to be very cautious about how we proceed. And of course, the vaccine on the horizon, but it's not here yet. So that's what's in the news this week.
Well, the weakest link. Goodbye.
Yep. Okay, great. So then with that comes all these rumors rolling out. So the rumor you're going to talk about today, and this was just picking one, that the FBI is going to get involved in the investigating the election fraud. So what's going on with that rumor?
Well, there's a great deal of controversy about the so-called presidential election that we had starting in the beginning of the summer and running through present, where votes continued to be tallied that were never seen before, votes that were sent out to people. They actually had more people in some places vote than there are registered voters, not the normal vote number, but the total registered voters. There should not be more votes than there can. In other words, in America, the normal turnout is between 50 and 58, 60%. So to have more than 100%, first of all, represents a very historical anomaly, but it also represents a clear case of fraud. We should not have dead people voting. We should not have illegal people voting. We should not have people who are voting in the wrong precinct, and we should not have people voting for other people. And so there are some very, serious concerns about what's going on. I have been wondering, as an American citizen, why the law enforcement system has not taken the lead in investigating the presidential election. There are enough allegations of fraud. And again, I am not here to say whether they're true or not, because I don't know. I have not investigated. I am not a computer expert. And even if I was, I haven't been given the data to determine that. But in any event, the FBI reportedly is about to start a criminal investigation into the alleged voter fraud involving the 2020 presidential election. Now, here's an interesting piece to this. It came from people who had computer data regarding the problems with the Dominion election system, the Dominion voting machines. And the computer expert says, I have been asked to turn over or give copies of my data to the FBI as part of an initial investigation. Now, what's interesting about this is, first of all, the FBI will not confirm it. That's why it's a rumor. The FBI will not confirm active investigations. Now, I ask the question, since when does the FBI not confirm active investigations unless they're sub rosa? Obviously, if they're running a drug sting or they're checking into illegal weapons trade, they can't go public with that. But in terms of something that's already this public, I don't know why the FBI can't say, hey, American citizens, American voters, American taxpayers, we're doing our job with your tax dollars. We're going to give you a definitive answer because we're supposedly a neutral source. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes of this. A lot of people are concerned who are concerned about the election are concerned about the timing, because we are rolling up on some hard deadlines for electoral college votes and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But that's the rumor of the week. The FBI may be getting involved.
I can't wait to see how that turns out. That will be definitely an interesting thing to watch. So,
Just the facts, ma'am.
just the fact. Now, the stimulus bill. I just saw announcements this morning. More news about it, and should Congress not go home for the holidays until that's all resolved? So what are the facts about this stimulus bill?
Well, especially because of what I'm calling surge 3. We've had the initial surge in March through June, and then we had a surprise surge later in the summer. And now we're having a third surge that started about a month ago and has people pretty scared. There's still a fear that following the incubation from last Thursday's Thanksgiving celebrations, that we could have a spike as part of this third surge from people who have traveled and been exposed over Thanksgiving. So part of the situation is that because of the surges, as I mentioned in my previous a couple segments, that a lot of small businesses have closed. There's a lot of disruption in the economy, that I think that there's a rationale out there from both parties that there should be some type of stimulus. Now, here is my main concern, which I've expressed before in other episodes of Saving America. I am an American taxpayer. I pay a lot of tax, both real estate taxes, personal property tax. I pay income tax. I do not want 1 penny of my money to be thrown in the toilets called California and New York. And I think there are a lot of Americans, the flyover country, which includes Texas, so-called, between the two far left states of New York and California, who do not want their money thrown in the garbage pit of California and New York. So here's a great firsthand, not a rumor, example. In California, they have paid over $1 billion in unemployment benefits to people in prison, including over 100 people on death row. Now, what kind of a system allows people who are in prison and on death row to get unemployment benefits? $1 billion. Folks, that's a lot of money. And I don't want 1 penny of my hard-earned money to go to such a wasteful operation. I don't want it to go to supporting people who are here illegally. Contrary to anything anybody says, people who are here illegally are not here to pay taxes, are not part of the American system. Generally speaking, they cannot legally own property. They're not paying real estate taxes. Texas famously does not have an income tax. In exchange, people like myself who own property pay very high real estate taxes. They ain't paying any into it. I don't want them voting, and I don't want them getting pieces of my tax dollars. So every Republican in the Senate that I've heard from said no bailout for California and New York. So if the stimulus is properly focused, and I'm hearing much lower numbers. When Trump was talking about this 6 weeks or so ago, he said I could go as high as $1.8 trillion, a number that caused me heart palpitations. But in any event, I've heard numbers today more like $800 billion focused on small business. Yay. Number two, making the PPP, payroll protection plan, more user-friendly. As a small business person who received a PPP, tiny PPP loan, we used it for rent and payroll in less than 6 weeks. It's very complicated. It doesn't need to be that complicated. And at the same time, much of it was thrown down the toilet. There were reports of people getting millions of dollars in PPP who did not qualify and did not properly, explain what they did with the money. I know some people were actually criminally prosecuted, which they should have been. But in any event, a sensible small business support system makes sense. I've also heard some support for another what I'd call a taxpayer bailout, that they would send some money to American families to try and give them a little boost. And that appears to have some bipartisan support. So there's been no consensus yet. But I think that one of the ironies of this long-running contentious debate is that if it's needed, why don't you get your act together and do it now rather than keep talking about it? And now that the election has passed, it does appear that the parties might be willing to sit down and come up with a more rational bill. But number one, I hope it stays under $1 trillion. And number two, I hope it is focused on direct support to individuals and some meaningful support for small businesses. So that's what I see in the news today.
What an exciting day. Wow. You got more animated than you normally do even. So that was great. Great. I loved your not enthusiasm, I won't call it that. I love your response and the way you talk about these topics. So David, once again, your book, The Decline of America and 100 Years of Leadership Failures. So that gives you a little hint. The book is available on Amazon. And right now, because of the Cyber Monday and today is Giving Tuesday, the ebook is available for 99 cents. So get your copy now and you'll see what a great book and what an idea for a Christmas present for that person in your life that likes history and likes to read about the history of the United States. David is also a professor and associate dean at the University of St. Thomas. So we could take another 15 or 20 minutes, David, and talk about your resume because you've got you've done a lot. So thank you for that. Thank you for your contribution and your ongoing contribution with the topics that you're talking about on saving America. So thank you. And thank you guys for joining us. And if you're listening and on one of our podcast platforms, then please subscribe and stay up to date with what's going on in saving America. So have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Sandy. Take care.